Story 1. In 2017, we moved from the United States to Germany and have no plans to return. Our work-life balance is incredible. We travel, have time for our child, enjoy public health care, benefit from free daycare, and have access to free college for our son. There is reliable public transportation, and we can bike everywhere in the city. The cost of living is lower while the quality of life is higher. There is very little violent crime, and we live 2 kilometers from a lake, at the midpoint between several large public parks, and within walking distance of about 12 grocery stores, hundreds of restaurants, and a major hospital with cardiac and children's specialty departments. We are 20 minutes from the central train station by bus and about 25 minutes from the heart of the city by subway. Our child's school is in a brand new building, offering numerous field trips and after-school activities, which are also free, just 2 tram stops or a 15-minute bike ride from our home. He is a native bilingual speaker in German and English. I am conversationally fluent in German and a native English speaker, and will start learning a 3rd language in a couple of years. Today, we rode bikes to the grocery store, then got cash and pedaled over to a sushi restaurant for lunch, before biking along the canal and stopping to relax in the sun and play on a swing set next to the water. It is not easy, but it has been infinitely worth it for us. Story 2. The move from the United States to Portugal is definitely worth it, and I highly recommend it. Pros: relaxed atmosphere, friendly people, affordable cost of living, good work-life balance, quality healthcare, and excellent wine. Cons: the bureaucracy can be tedious, and things are easier if you have good connections. I absolutely love my life. Story 3. US to Japan. Owning a car here is very expensive. Owning a house is much cheaper than in the US. Healthcare is less expensive, but finding a decent doctor can be quite challenging. Overall, I enjoy it here more. Story 4. We moved to Stockholm, Sweden, in 2017. I would do it again in a heartbeat. The quality of life is incredible. It is great not to be dependent on a car. Stockholm is an exceptionally beautiful city, built on numerous islands connected by bridges. Water, parks, and nature are everywhere. The bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is excellent. There are many fantastic bars, restaurants, and cafes, along with easy access to museums, concerts, theater, and sporting events. What is there not to love? Story 5. We moved from New York City to Switzerland. Everything about life here is better: schooling, safety, work-life balance, and especially salaries. Story 6. Moved from the United States to Europe in 2011 when I was 23. I have lived in Spain, the Netherlands, and Belgium. My quality of life is incomparably better. I have not owned a car since I arrived here. Most neighborhoods are walkable and mixed use, with cafes and restaurants just outside my door, and everything is a short tram or metro ride away, including friends, work, and shopping. There is also a quick train ride to an airport that connects you to the rest of Europe via inexpensive flights. Life moves at a better pace. Things are less frantic, and people chat over a beer or a glass of wine for hours, often in different languages. I never stopped learning. Even a trip to the supermarket can yield new vocabulary and cultural insights. I am healthier here. I walk more, eat better, and socialize more freely. I have always lived within biking distance to decent nature spots, such as Casa de Campo and beyond in Madrid, the dunes in Holland, and the Forest of Soignes in Brussels. I cycle on a whim. I am not in existential fear of a bad diagnosis or bankruptcy. Firearms are not common. It feels safe to walk home at night in large metropolitan areas. There are things about the United States that I love, and I feel very American in some respects, which becomes clearer when abroad, and Europe has its own set of challenges. However, I would never move back. Story 7. There are many advantages and disadvantages. Most people do not qualify for a visa. For many, it is not simply a matter of completing paperwork and paying fees. Obtaining a decent education or having marketable skills is essential. Additionally, one must be healthy and able to prove they will not be a burden on the new country. The average person struggles with this. If it were not for some specific circumstances, I would not have been able to move. That said, I did move to New Zealand without a degree. I was low income in America and I am low income here, The advantages include a comprehensive culture and rule of law, affordable healthcare that is not tied to employment, decent public transportation, mince and cheese pie. The disadvantages include everything is more expensive, and I earn less money despite doing more work. Isolation. Flights are costly, and there are fewer shopping options. If you have a niche hobby, you will pay more and have limited choices. The taste of Taco Bell here is disappointing. Story 8. In 2016, I moved from the United States to Australia. I initially came here to study but ended up meeting an Australian and am now a citizen. I am also a teacher, and my quality of life is significantly better than it would be in the United States. I earn a living wage from my teaching income, have access to healthcare, and through my job I receive 2 weeks off every 10 weeks. The only downside is that my family is a full day of travel away, and if I want to travel off the island, it takes a minimum of 7 hours. However, I wouldn't change anything about this decision. Story 9. Moved from the United States to Canada 10 years ago. I cannot understate this, but things have been so much better for me here. In the United States, I always struggled to maintain health insurance. Even when I had a good job, almost every full-time position I worked required me to work several months before I was eligible to apply for health insurance. Before securing those good full-time positions, I would work a small number of part-time positions simultaneously just to make ends meet, which did not make me eligible for health insurance without paying privately. Private health insurance is often not affordable for young adults, in my experience. Most people my age were either still on their parents' insurance or did not have coverage. The only options when I got sick were to pay a large amount out of pocket to see a doctor, go without treatment, which is what I mostly did, or go to emergency care. Because of this, I spent most of my life worried about getting sick, which caused me a great deal of stress and led to me getting sick frequently. When I did have health insurance, the copay still made it difficult to afford seeing a doctor. If I did not have $75 to $100 in my bank account, I had to deal with being sick. I was already living paycheck to paycheck, and missing work meant more money I did not have, so being out even more made it hard to justify seeing a doctor who often did not care about me and would spend only a few minutes talking to me. In Canada, I spend far less than I did in the United States. I have had incredible experiences with my primary care providers and in the hospital. I get sick much less often because I am not constantly worried about going broke from getting sick. I could write a novel about the differences and how much I love it here, but I will end with just 2 things. I once passed out at a friend's house in the United States from something I could not afford to see a doctor for. A friend took me to the hospital where they gave me fluids. I was there for about 2 hours and received a bill for $38,000. My mother, who had excellent insurance that my dad paid privately for, and my family still paid $500,000 out of pocket for her cancer treatments. The doctors stopped taking her pain seriously, ceased running tests on her, and she took the rest of her pain medication one night in an attempt to end her life. After one $5,000 ambulance ride and some tests, they finally realized the cancer had spread, which was the source of her pain. She died less than 6 months later. My dad was still making payments on her treatments long after she passed. 2 weeks ago, my husband had an ulcerative colitis flare-up here in Canada. He had to go to emergency care. We had a bed in 20 minutes, he was admitted a few hours later, and they said, "We could give you a referral, but we think it would be better to have you do a colonoscopy now. Would that be okay?" He had a colonoscopy done in the hospital about 14 hours later, and the next day was sent home with a treatment plan. We had a fantastic private room, the staff was incredible, and everyone there actually cared. The Ontario Health Insurance Plan covered everything. The only thing we had to worry about was filing the short-term disability paperwork through his union to get reimbursed for his time off. Oh, and when we had a baby, 12 months of parental leave. I will absolutely never return to the distressing reality that is the United States. Long live Canada. Story 10. I moved to Scotland, and my life is much better. I had a major advantage as a dual citizen, so I didn't have to worry about most immigration challenges. I absolutely love living here and have no desire to ever move back to the United States. Story 11. I traveled from the United States to New Zealand in 2018, and I would definitely do it again. I am truly happy to live in this small country at the end of the world. It is endlessly beautiful, the people are kind, and the work-life balance is phenomenal. I am now a permanent resident and am a few years away from obtaining citizenship. I will never go back. Story 12. I plan to retire in Indonesia, but not in Bali. My wife is Indonesian, I speak the language, enjoy their food regularly, and I have traveled to Indonesia 7 times, staying for at least 1 month each visit. I served in the military for several years and spent time in South Korea, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Story 13. US to Spain 2021 with citizenship. Never say never, but it is hard to imagine a scenario where I return. Spain wins on the following. Healthcare, public healthcare is free for everyone. Private insurance costs me $175 per month, with no copays or deductible. I estimate that this has saved me $10,000 per year. Cost of living, everything is significantly cheaper, including supermarkets, restaurants, cafes, and housing. Quality of life, unbeatable. The climate is favorable, with wonderful cities, the sea, mountains, and abundant culture. Public transportation, remarkable. I don't really need a car for 90% of my activities. Education, college, or university costs 10% of what it does in the United States. Important note, Spain is not a socialist country. The United States wins on the following. Economic opportunity, you can earn a living here, but the typical job pays significantly less than in the United States. Story 14. I moved to the UK 8 years ago and do not foresee returning. Life is generally better here. I have a highly desirable skill for work and make a good living. Overall, it's great, but there is a certain longing for home, family, and friends that affects most people. I miss my friends, but I have also made new ones. You need to be willing to start over completely if you want to succeed. Story 15. I have been living abroad for 8 years and in Spain for 5. I cannot overstate how much better my quality of life is here. Healthcare is affordable. Food is inexpensive. Rent is reasonable. I feel safe, relaxed, and I take a nap every day, as is customary. There are amazing restaurants and kind people. The area is walkable, and I didn't have a car until this year. There are many holidays. I am grateful to be here every single day, and I work hard to integrate into the community to thank them for their kindness. On the downside, I miss having a clothes dryer. I could buy one, but I rent. Sometimes, I get frustrated with my Spanish skills, especially in hospitals or government-related situations. The visa process can be difficult, and for some people it's not easy to pick up and move. However, there are options like the digital nomad visa or a work visa. Ultimately, the United States hasn't felt like home to me for a long time, and it won't be again. Story 16. My aunt moved to the Philippines from Vancouver because it was more affordable. Household help is inexpensive there. Not even 3 months later, she realized how fortunate we are to live in Vancouver. Story 17. I moved to Denmark in 2017 and have no plans to return. The society in the United States is troubling, and I do not see it changing anytime soon. Here, we have better and free healthcare and education. My kids, aged 8 and 10, walk or bike to school and their friends' houses independently. I enjoy a true work-life balance. We do not face gun violence, and our society is not plagued by corruption. The only thing I miss about the United States is the national parks. I wonder how long they will remain. Story 18. We left when I was 12. My parents could afford private education for 4 children in university, a 6-bedroom house, all while living in a bustling city with excellent public transportation. I currently work as a radiation oncologist in Santiago, Chile, with no school debt. I don't think I would be in such a good position in terms of education and finances if they hadn't left. I have no plans to move back for now. It is a great place to raise and educate a family. Story 19. I am originally from Canada and moved back last year. In short, it is not going well. The job market is not great, and I am currently underemployed because I needed an income and took the first job that was offered. My salary is 1/3 of what it used to be, and my wife is currently looking for a job. The cost of everything is much higher than in the United States. Even though we are staying at my childhood home rent-free while we get established, we are not saving anywhere near what we used to. My son is doing well, however, which was the reason we moved to begin with. He loves having a big house. Daycare is not excessively expensive like it is in the United States, and I do not have to worry about gun violence at school. Story 20. I moved from a nice but generic house in the suburbs, which wasn't close to anything, to a much bigger house 2 blocks from the ocean and within walking distance to the city center. It doesn't suck. Would I recommend it? No. Wages are significantly lower here, but since I'm retired, that doesn't matter to me. Story 21. United States to Argentina. I speak the language at a near-native level and live in the interior. Once you get used to the idiosyncrasies inherent to Argentine culture, both economic and social, it is highly recommended. I used to miss home, but that feeling has lessened over the years and completely disappeared in the last few months. Story 22. I moved from the United States to Europe about 5 years ago, and honestly, it has been one of the best decisions I have ever made. The slower pace of life, better work-life balance, universal healthcare, and generally feeling less stressed all the time have been huge positives. There are challenges, of course. Homesickness hits hard sometimes. Language barriers can be humbling, and dealing with visa issues isn't always smooth. However, I have found a sense of peace and presence that I never really had back in the United States. I spend more time outdoors, eat better, and interestingly, I actually know my neighbors now. Would I recommend it? Absolutely, if you are open to change, willing to adapt, and want a different perspective on life. Just don't expect it to be a fairy tale. It is still life, just with different pros and cons. Story 23. I moved to Canada in 2009 for university and decided to stay. I live in northern British Columbia, have a family, and love it here. I bought a house last year. The career prospects are good. There are amazing outdoor opportunities, and the quality of life is incredible. I have no intention of moving back, especially with the current political climate. I would definitely recommend experiencing life up north, but I suggest staying away from the Toronto and Vancouver areas. Story 24. Yes, it is better to move from the United States to the Netherlands. Consider making the move when you are older and have saved some money in the United States. While wages are lower in Europe, the work-life balance is better, and health insurance is also a significant advantage. Story 25. I didn't go permanently, but I lived in South Korea and Japan for a few years each. Japan, absolutely. South Korea, no thanks. I also met many people from various parts of the world visiting or living in Japan. The obvious difference between those who have a good time and those who don't is language ability. Story 26. Michigan to Germany, yes, it was worth it. No, I'm never going back. I have been here 7 years. I left everything behind in 2017, and I will be applying for citizenship soon. I started an apprenticeship and get paid to go to school and work. I will be starting university again as well to pursue a master's degree. I went from being homeless, selling drugs, avoiding police, and dealing with gang violence. I lost enough friends to overdoses or gun violence. I was too poor to go to the doctor. I couldn't go to the emergency room after a particularly nasty accident that left me scarred for life, simply because I couldn't pay. I lived in Flint during the water crisis and the urban training by the United States Army in the city in 2014 or 2015. Then the Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton debate came here the year after, and federal authorities shut down the whole city. Then Donald Trump got elected in 2016. I have a career. I have good credit. I have free time. My employer doesn't ask questions when I'm sick. I have money to go on vacation. I can ride my bike to the doctor's office just 10 minutes away. The German and European Union governments have strong consumer protection policies. I've never paid an overdraft fee. I can take the bus or train if I'm too drunk to drive. I don't even need a car if I don't want one. People usually mind their own business. My neighbors come from countries all over the globe. I never have to be scared that anyone could be armed. It's hard to make friends, but people find Americans fascinating to talk to, especially if you speak decent enough German. Nobody speaks English. After 7 years, I could count the number of people I've met who could have any meaningful conversations with me in English on one hand. I pay a lot in taxes, though. My base pay isn't enough compared to my friends in America who work the same job. Not even close. But I have 30 vacation days, 12 holidays, and bridge days often included. I receive vacation and Christmas bonuses, and I was sick from work a total of 29 days last year. And I can drink the tap water. A lot of people, almost stereotypically, always complain about Germany and its government. Lately, I have heard quite enough from my German coworkers about how much their country sucks. They truly have no clue how good they have it here. Oh, and I live under a castle on a mountain, and there's a wonderful medieval ducal palace right in the middle of my town. Story 27. We moved from the United States to the United Kingdom, and it was the best decision we ever made. We were financially struggling and didn't see a future there. Our children were still young, aged 8, 7, and 2. We used our tax return to make the leap. My husband's parents live here in the UK, so we came for a holiday, completed my husband's citizenship, and everything fell into place. We would never live in the United States again. My children are much more cultured. We get to travel more, and I can work again. We have a home and a simpler, quieter life. Story 28. I originally came to Finland on a 1-year consulting contract and have been here for 11 years now. I am from the Northwest, so the cold doesn't bother me, and the summers are amazing. I can lay out in the sun at 10 p.m. I took an $8,000 pay cut at the beginning, but honestly, I didn't even feel it. Rent is less than half of what I was paying in San Diego. Internet access is included in my apartment, and healthcare is completely free through my employer. I walk to work and take excellent public transportation if I want to go somewhere. I also have access to a company car if needed. Utilities fluctuate but are still much cheaper than in the United States. The work-life balance is extraordinary here. My current contract specifies that I cannot work more than 37.5 hours a week. If I do, it gets calculated into my yearly bonus or vacation days. I also get 5 weeks of vacation a year and am required to use them. I have a blonde Swedish girlfriend, and I am learning the Finnish language to apply for citizenship probably next year. Having a Finnish passport means I can work anywhere in the European Union and travel to more places without a visa, while still keeping my US passport. Story 29. From the United States to China. I earn a good income in a career that pays little in the United States, and I am much healthier physically. On the other hand, healthcare can be inconsistent, and you always feel like a foreigner here. Personally, I enjoy it. I have been here for about 8 years, lost a significant amount of weight, obtained 2 master's degrees, and got married here. It works for me, but it may not be suitable for everyone. Story 30. United States to Australia. It is worth it. I didn't know it then, but now I'm glad I didn't have my family interrupted by all the chaos related to active shooter drills, women's rights, and political controversies. Story 31. My wife is from California and moved to the UK. I just asked her about her experiences, and her feedback was: pros, cultural diversity, lower cost of living, national health service and free healthcare, public transport, ease of international travel, holiday and maternity entitlement, general feeling of safety, better schooling options if we ever have children. Cons: over 11 hours and significant expenses to see family. Weather: lower salary. She has no interest in moving back and loves it here. Even with the lower salary, the affordability compared to Southern California makes it worthwhile. Story 32. Things I love about Northern Ireland: healthcare, work-life balance. Things I don't love: sometimes living in the countryside feels very isolated. I miss living in a neighborhood where I could walk to get coffee and socialize. Story 33. I moved to Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada during the pandemic and feel like I dodged a huge bullet had my family and I stayed. I am not a radical leftist or anything, but seeing how the United States has been operating these last few years as an outsider has been wild. It feels like getting out of the rat race and realizing what I was going through while being an adult in the United States. We still visit and feel nostalgic for grocery prices and warm beaches. Everything else is honestly pretty crazy. I have been to Austin, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and all of these amazing cities we used to love are still there, but the vibes are very different. Story 34. In addition to this question, How does one even begin the process of moving to another country? Is it through job hunting or having someone already there to help? I have long wanted to relocate, most likely to Canada, but I have never really known where to start, and any attempts to explore the process are met with mixed information. Story 35. Moved from the United States to Mexico. It was definitely worth it. My life is much better and simpler, and my quality of life is significantly higher as well. It is 100% worth it, and I regret not doing it sooner, to be honest. It's not perfect, but compared to the United States, anything is better than what it is right now. Story 36. I moved to Australia, and it was the best decision I ever made. There is no way I would go back to America now. There are no school shootings, no reckless leaders ignoring the law, and almost no hostility between fellow citizens based on political beliefs. Sure, there are exceptions, but this is how it is supposed to be. Story 37. The Netherlands offers a stark contrast to the United States. If you dislike the grind culture, divisive politics, and the overall lack of community found in the United States, moving here can feel like a complete remedy. However, do not relocate if you are looking for a house, as there are few available. Story 38. I immigrated to Canada in 2018 and became a Canadian citizen in 2023. I'm very glad I made this decision, especially after witnessing how problematic America has become. To make matters worse, I'm from Florida. I once viewed my home state as a voice of reason in a troubled region, but it has now become a hub for the worst individuals in America. It's much more rational here. In the past 7 years, I haven't met anyone who believes the world is 6,000 years old. In Florida, I was the only person in my company who didn't share that belief. I also rarely encounter strong supporters of former President Trump here. Back in Florida, I paid $3,000 for a minor health issue, but the worst that I've dealt with here was waiting 2 hours. I would say the biggest difference between the two countries is that Canada can criticize itself, while America struggles to do so. Acknowledging problems is the first step to improvement. If you voice a criticism about America within its borders, people often respond with hostility and label you a communist. Many people mistakenly assume that I left because of Donald Trump. While he certainly contributed to my decision, my desire to leave began long before he emerged in politics. It all started from a negative military experience in 2007. I created a forum to share my regrets years after that. Story 39. Whether or not it is advisable depends entirely on a person's personality and preferences. I have been away for so long that I feel more at home in my adopted country than I do in the United States. My life is good, and I have no intention of ever moving back to the United States. However, I also know people for whom it would be absolutely the wrong choice. The only downside for me is that my parents are getting older, which is concerning. Firstly, there is the realization of how much time we have lost. Secondly, I worry about the day when one or both of them may no longer be capable of living independently. Story 40. Yes, I moved to Norway. It is peaceful, and the raw nature is quite beautiful with abundant fresh air. The healthcare system is excellent. I just started my maternity leave, which covers my entire salary, and I don't go back until January 2026. The taxes are a bit high, but I believe the government puts them to good use. The pay isn't as high as in the United States, but it is certainly comfortable enough for us to live an average middle-class lifestyle. It is also safe to raise children here, and public transportation is very good. I was fortunate that my husband is Norwegian. When I first met him online in late 2006, I honestly didn't even know where Norway was. I only knew it was similar to Sweden. The only things I miss from the United States are my family, a few friends, and some fast food and restaurants, so I would like to visit the United States but not live there. Story 41. I lived in Europe and then in Dubai for 5 years, and I have now spent 15 years in Australia. Yes, I am happy I made these choices. I identify as Australian first. The only two downsides here are the high cost of living, which creates a real middle-class experience even with a good job. The second downside is that it is a significant journey to visit family, so that does not happen often. Story 42. I found the American dream. Moving to Europe at 24 was the best thing I ever did. For nearly 20 years, I built a fulfilling life in Prague, Berlin, and Belgium, alongside strong connections in numerous other European cities such as Brussels, London, Galway, Barcelona, Verviers, Liège, Faro, Budapest, Istanbul, Malta, and the Balkans, as well as further afield in Aonang, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Jordan, and Mauritius. The peace of mind that comes with parental leave, no healthcare costs, and my child's access to debt-free university education is invaluable. Additionally, guaranteed paid vacation makes life less stressful. I have found it much easier to have a comfortable middle-class existence abroad, a sentiment echoed by many American expatriates. I truly believe many of us discovered a version of the American dream there. Immigrants creating families, perhaps trading the picket-fenced house for the reconstructed modern flats of Berlin or Prague. Although I am currently enjoying a temporary year back in the United States, seeing new things and old favorites, I am very much looking forward to returning to Europe in September to reconnect with friends and embrace a slower pace of life. The possibility of future moves for new adventures is also exciting. While this visit to the United States has been enjoyable, long-term living here again is low on my list, unless it involves a short-term exploration of a completely new and vibrant city. My heart and my family's future are in Europe, and if not there, then somewhere a bit further east. Story 43. I moved abroad 15 years ago, and I'm so glad I did. It really opened my eyes to things I hadn't understood, like how difficult and expensive it is to emigrate. Even though I spoke the same language in my host country, the culture was more different than I thought. I have mixed feelings about the United States. I didn't know when I left that I wouldn't be going back, but it doesn't entirely feel like home anymore because I'm not the same person I was when I left. It's surprising to me now how strongly some Americans hold the belief that we are the best country without having actually lived anywhere else. My parents give off that vibe every time they visit, and I'm sure that used to be me, but I've learned and grown so much as a person in another country, and I'm happy here. My life is pretty good, and I'm quite fortunate. I have a house, children, and my citizenship. I miss the weather of where I used to live and I would earn more in the United States, but I am happy with access to healthcare and the ability to explore nearby countries and cultures. I definitely recommend it. Story 44. The United States to New Zealand about 20 years ago. Fantastic lifestyle. Similar to a modern version of Mayberry RFD. The only negative is that, with the exception of Australia, nothing is nearby. Story 45. The drawbacks include being away from family and lower salaries. Houses and plots of land tend to be smaller with fewer modern conveniences, but this may not necessarily be a drawback and is not always true. The advantages encompass everything else. Story 46. Unfortunately, I returned to pursue degrees, which has been quite challenging. I should be ready for my final farewell in a few years. Story 47. Metro Detroit to Berlin 5 years ago. I am still incredibly happy with the choice and hope to stay here forever. It was definitely worth it. I occasionally want to pinch myself as I go about my daily life, looking around at the beautiful scenery and reflecting on my happiness. My life is great. I live in a beautiful green part of Berlin but can reach the city center in about 30 minutes. I reside by the river, and there are multiple beaches, both lake and river, within a 15-minute walk or tram ride. There are more than a dozen fantastic playgrounds in walking distance for my child, along with numerous parks. Some of the parks and playgrounds have adjacent beer gardens too. I can take my dog with me into most restaurants, and even in my little corner of Berlin, I have discovered a few amazing dining spots. Italian cuisine is especially good in Germany compared to the United States. Ice cream is freshly made in small batches and is delicious. There are many types of affordable, freshly baked bread available on every corner. My neighborhood has a local market 3 times a week in the town square, offering fresh cheese, meat, fruit, and other goods. It is currently Easter holidays for my child, and she has 2 weeks off from school. She enjoys more than 2 weeks of holidays not just at Christmas and Easter, but also in the spring and fall, along with several long weekends and summer vacation. There are many more public holidays here, and a minimum of 20 vacation days by law, with most companies offering 25 to 30 days. You are also required to actually use them. If you enjoy traveling, there are many places to visit within a few hours of flight, making it hard to decide where to go. I do not need a car to get around, which is beneficial for both my health and the planet, and I only pay €59 a month for transportation. There are no car payments, registration fees, insurance, or gas costs. Groceries are less expensive and often fresher and tastier. Phone and internet services are significantly cheaper. Daycare is free. I do not have to save for my child's university. I can visit a doctor or hospital if needed, even with an ambulance, without worrying about the cost. I pay about the same in taxes as I did in the United States, but can save more money because many costs are covered by these taxes. Additionally, spring arrives early and winter arrives late compared to the northern United States. I think I will walk to the library with my child today, passing numerous flowering fruit trees and magnolias, enjoying the sun and temperatures in the 70s Fahrenheit this week. Then we will have lunch at a restaurant along the river. After she goes to bed, I am meeting friends at the local beer garden. I will walk home down cobbled streets, knowing I never need to worry about driving after an evening out due to the excellent public transport. The cobblestones are a different story after a night out. Story 48. Sadly, as a person of color, New York City is the best place for me. I lived abroad for many years and the quality of life was great, but it was very racist. Story 49. My wife and I genuinely want to do this. Lately, we feel that American culture just isn't suited for us. The only challenge is that we have 6 children, which would make the move difficult on its own, and they would probably have a hard time leaving friends and activities. Still, I would love to hear how others managed with multiple children. Story 50. My wife left the United States in 1996 to get married here in South Africa. We visit the United States regularly, but we love it here in South Africa despite the crime and corruption. The list of reasons why this country is better in our opinion is a long one. There are definitely things I would enjoy about living in the United States right now, but we simply prefer it here. In fact, the decision to stay here in South Africa was her choice. One thing I would definitely recommend for most Americans is to travel and see how the rest of the world works. Not prepackaged tours, but visits where you really get to interact with other people. Story 51. I moved to Denmark because my Danish husband didn't want to live in the United States. It has been absolutely worth it. I have a great life here, better than I ever could have had back home. In the 15 years since I moved here, I bought a house, we have a daughter, I found good work, and I earned my master's degree. Do I recommend it? That's complicated. I recognize that the path I took is not open to many people. It's one of the hardest things I have ever done, and it has been an uphill struggle with constantly shifting goals. It's an extremely stressful process. There are many things I miss about home. Some items are prohibitively expensive or rare treats, and with the conflict between the United States and here, those treats are even more costly and scarce. It's not a life for everyone. It's not easy, and you have to work hard. I know many people who eventually returned because they couldn't handle how different it was. Story 52. A friend of mine moved from California to Vancouver, Canada, both to study abroad and to be with her partner while working on obtaining her citizenship. Overall, the quality of life is much better, and she experienced a panic attack due to the possibility of having to return to the United States. Thankfully, she is able to stay another year in Canada. There are downsides, though. The cost of living is very high, and the job market is challenging unless you have a specialized skill that is in demand. It also does not help that certain political movements have slowly been trying to influence Canada, although the unification of Canada was a positive outcome of recent political events. Story 53. I have lived in Japan for 25 years and will not go back. The healthcare system is fantastic, education is affordable, and public transportation is convenient. In Japan, it is safe, clean, and the people are reasonable. Story 54. I have lived in Scotland since 2005. My life is not perfect. Moving abroad did not solve my problems and, in fact, introduced some new ones. For a long time, I considered moving back, but that thought faded significantly after the first 10 years. I am personally doing better than I would probably be in the United States. My husband earns enough that I have been able to pursue personal passions instead of working in an office job. We own our house with the mortgage entirely paid off. I cannot drive, which was impossible to navigate in the United States, but it is not really a problem here, not to mention the healthcare system. Be prepared that if you move overseas, your family may never visit you. They might say they have a great excuse to visit, but they likely won't. Maybe once or twice, but you will be expected to buy plane tickets and do all the traveling. Even calling you on holidays will feel like a chore, and you will always have to calculate the time difference for phone calls, even after 20 years in the same place. Perhaps your family is different, but that has been my experience. Story 55. I moved from the United States to Canada. I highly recommend it. Life is amazing, and with the industry I was in, it was actually much easier to work my way up to upper management. There would have been significantly more competition in the United States. Story 56. I cannot begin to explain how much better life is outside the United States. On every level. Is it perfect? No. Is it better? By far. I will never go back. Story 57. This entire thread is an example of survivorship bias. Generally, people who make the significant decision to move to a different country are likely to be happy with that choice. Story 58. I moved to Stockholm in 2021 and loved how much more relaxed the work culture was, along with not having to constantly worry about homelessness due to preventable illness or the rapid backsliding of human rights in the United States. There are also many aspects of life that make things slightly easier in general, such as affordable and accessible public transportation, additional consumer protection on everything from food to medicine and utilities, and much more streamlined public services. Unfortunately, many public sector workers seem to take every excuse they could to shirk their duties. Navigating the immigration system became an unexpected headache with numerous hidden steps that changed yearly, and the university I attended was illegally assigning upwards of 100-hour work weeks regularly, making it impossible to hold a job while studying despite being guaranteed that right. Filing any sort of complaint was, in most cases, impossible or required a years-long process of internal arbitration just to determine if the complaint was eligible for filing, because you shouldn't even have to file a complaint because it would be illegal for them to break the law in the first place, more or less the real-life version of, in Sweden, it's illegal to be a criminal. I eventually developed nearly constant migraines and seizures that were so severe I was unable to seek medical attention physically, with hospitals consistently referring me to clinics for treatment and clinics consistently refusing to believe that a patient could leave the emergency room still sick. Primary care didn't understand why I didn't want to work during multiple day-long seizures while being unconscious and said that not working was making me feel worse. So I wasn't provided a sick note and therefore couldn't take sick leave. I tried switching doctors a few times and was eventually told, "We're not even going to entertain the idea of serving patients who switch clinics as often as you do," all while making constant visits to the emergency room, which continued to write more letters to my clinic stating they needed to take action. I ultimately took the advice of the emergency room nurses and moved back in with my parents in the United States so I could at least have someone to feed me and assist with daily living tasks. But I was left with inadequate public insurance and continue to face the same belligerent behavior and lack of progress from doctors in the United States. I tried contacting a few advocacy groups and the Red Cross, but was either ignored or told there was nothing they could do except ask me to speak to my doctor. None of my fellow former American friends have experienced anything remotely similar and have glowing recommendations. So, long story short, it's totally worth the move if you expect to never get seriously ill and if you have someone to help you understand the local bureaucratic systems. Do not underestimate how quickly things can go wrong when you don't have the same kind of safety net as citizens, both in terms of legal guarantees and local connections to address issues that arise. These safety nets are often designed with citizens in mind and may not be able to provide full services to non-citizens due to oversights, even if they are technically required to do so. Story 59. The United States to Taiwan in 2013 has been significantly better in nearly every aspect. I am not living paycheck to paycheck and have been able to generate considerable savings on a teacher's salary while traveling extensively. A social healthcare system is one of the greatest improvements. The geopolitics of the region is a constant concern in the background. Moving here was the best decision I have ever made. Story 60. I moved to London and have since returned. For anyone not in the top 10% of earners, leaving the United States is the best choice. However, if you are a high earner, your earning potential in the US is significantly higher. For me, it makes more sense to endure the challenges in the US and then retire abroad. Story 61. My wife and I moved to Japan last year and love it so far. We have plans for an extended stay or to visit another country. All the people we talk to here are expatriates from the United States who say they will never go back. Most of them have lived here or in other countries for most of their adult lives. Story 62. Was it worth it? Would you recommend it? I live abroad in Asia, and I'm not sure how to answer these questions. I guess I'd say yes to the first one, but no to the second. How can I say I wouldn't recommend it if I'm also saying it was worth it? Maneuvering a totally different culture is not easy. The reward for successfully doing that is just being slightly more accepted than you were before and having slightly more access to the normal life of everyone around you. It's a steep learning curve that only leads to being slightly less unusual than before. No one will forget that you're foreign. No matter how proficient you are in the local language or how understanding you are of the local mindset and culture, the best you can become is a guest in someone else's world. It can be incredibly lonely, even if you're surrounded by people who care about you. Yet everything is an adventure. Something as simple as buying a coffee becomes a mini adventure where you need to use the right words, respond to the follow-up questions, and figure out the etiquette for the queue, waiting for your coffee, paying, and using membership points. Sometimes I dream about going back in time to tell myself to live a simpler life with my real family and my old friends, but I also wouldn't give up what I've experienced or the people I've met, even if it means I'll likely be over 60 and alone in a difficult apartment eventually. Story 63. I lived in Japan for 9 years and moved back a year and a half ago. I dream every day of getting out of here again to Australia, the United Kingdom, Italy, Canada, or Japan. However, this country is a mess. Some chaos I can accept, but the lack of civility at this scale is not one I can tolerate. Story 64. I am currently in China and will be moving to Denmark next year. I can't imagine working another day of my life in America. I work significantly fewer hours and earn substantially more with much better benefits. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.